year.
I know.
Riverdale, 16%.
Now kids are
And
looking
it's
at
58,000 at
anything
450 a
that's
month.
over 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. They're looking at
That's how it's changed.
I wonder what it would be like in today's dollars. Would it be less?
How are we going to do
still?
it?
It'd still be,
The same way we
it's,
did it.
it's
You just
elevated. I mean,
just
it's,
do it.
tuck your
it
head.
moves along that way.
Wow.
It's just hard because wages
7.5%
haven't
today
kept
is
up.
a lot of money for home buyers.
Well, especially with the price of houses.
Yeah.
Are we ready? Okay, thank you. We'd like to welcome everyone here to the Planning Commission meeting for September 26, 2023. All of the commissioners are present and accounted for, with the exception of Commissioner Eskelson, who is excused. We would like to now open the meeting for public comment, aside from any of the agenda items that we have outlined for this meeting. So if there are any public comments that would like to be made, we would welcome those at this time. And seeing none, we will now proceed then to presentations and reports. Mr. Eggett.
Thank you. I'll just quickly note in very brief what was discussed in the work session. Ashley is coming along in their space in the old Shopko building. Napa Auto Parts is going in and continuing forward in their space between Zerkers and Lumber Liquidators. Thrive Appliances continuing forward with their improvement next to the old R.C. Willey building. There is a tenant that is looking to move into the space next to the old Bed Bath & Beyond, and a tenant that's looking at using the space as old Bed Bath & Beyond space. I'll let you know more in detail in the future. You see the Shake Shack building is moving very quickly and getting close to being completed. The EV station supercharger site by Olive Garden is in installation steps. What else did I miss? And then America First is moving forward with a future site plan submittal sometime probably in November. The road is linked up to the existing Cozy Dell from 4400, and at some point in the future, the roundabout improvement by the Tesla site will be going forward. And then there was a discussion about 5600, and as was noted, the road connector onto the new road connector onto the freeway off of 5600, and it'll also be a slip road to Riverdale Road is being installed, and then no left turn onto Freeway Park Drive from 5600 or 5600 into Freeway Park Drive onto 5600 into Hill Air Force Base. That will start as of Friday, that restriction. So I think that's everything I covered in work session in about a 3 to 5 minute report. There you go.
All right, thank you. As far as our consent items, the minutes for September 12th weren't included in the packet and haven't been reviewed, so we're going to defer those until our next meeting for approval at that time. We now have our action items on our agenda. Mr. Eggett, consideration of the new driveway access installation request for Flex Building Site, approximately 770 West River Park Drive, as requested by Tri-State Metal Roofing and HMP Investments.
Thank you. Whoa. Frog in my throat. Woo. Yeah, as you noted, Tri-State Metal Roofing Supply and HMP Investments are the requesting groups on this. Troy Katrubis is president, as is Kirsten Katrubis, to discuss this if you have any questions for them. It is required as part of Title 10, Chapter 15, Section 7, to access the site. The property owner is HMP Investments. Planning Commission is the approving body for a small site plan improvement request for driveway access, like a new install. And general plan, obviously, is Planned Commercial High, which continues to support this land use request. Reviewing staff comments, verified with Mr. Douglas a comment wherein he stated that to court, if the meter is 24 inches away and the approach and curb cut are done according to detail in the Riverdale Construction and Development Standards, I have no further concerns. And then he obviously noted that is what he told him. Our police chief in 2 different emails says he has no concern in regards to conversations with the court about the new entrance, and then goes into some detail in the second earlier email about that. He doesn't feel like there will be any concern with the exit point being used there as an egress, no blocking of the roadway to be concerned about. And then the fire chief states, I spoke with Cord, don't have any issues with the new drive as the existing accesses allow for fire department access. So those are the comments from staff. From a planning perspective, clearly it meets code. I have no concerns. You'll see the request from Cord Katrubis relative to Tri-State Metal Roofing's desire there. You'll see the next image is the location of that 20-foot driveway aisle and notes relative to that, how that will operate, where things will be relocated, et cetera, so that anybody who may be hearing or watching this understands. Currently, the semi-trucks access the driveway aisles as currently established and can get in there to deliver, but then it becomes difficult to exit the site without some complicated driving. And so this new accessway will allow a delivery truck to come up to the garage, drop off the whatever deliveries they're delivering to the site, and then drive right out that egress point. So the plan and intent would be for that to be egress only and not intended to be an ingress. Drive aisles way I understand it, but clearly if you have more questions, you can ask the Katrubis for more information about that. And then the last sheet was just some comments that Mr. Douglas had, and then Cord Katrubis has responded to all of those, and that's what you see in red of those responses relative to that. And I know that they've since worked through all those discussion points. So with that, that's really the extent of it, unless you have any further questions for me, and I would defer to the Planning Commission as you see fit to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone from HMP Investments, Tri-State Metal Roofing? If you'd like to step forward and give us your name and your residence, please.
City residents. Oh, okay. Troy Katrubis. I'm with HMP Investments. I currently live in Huntsville.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome. Commissioners, any questions that we have for Mr. Katrubis?
Yeah, my only question would be, do you plan to install some signage indicating that that is an egress only or an exit only spot, so you don't have through traffic going into that, or trucks that maybe think that it's an in and out situation?
Currently on the west side. Now, you're probably all familiar with driving off of River Park Drive, the back way into where the Hobby Lobby is and everything, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you've noticed, there's a big arrow that's painted as an egress, right? Mm-hmm. But everybody pulls off the road and goes in there anyways. And that's what we would do. We would paint on the ground just like for marking, saying that it's for going out, not coming in. And it's a little difficult to, more so, it's not just for it's more for their customers. Tri-State Metal Roofing Supply is primarily a retail, do-it-yourself type store. Although that they have roofers and stuff like that come in, but most, everything that they pull in, they go to that west parking or that west driveway, pull into the parking lot, and then get loaded up, and then have to go all the way towards the east. And since they can't make that immediate turn on the east driveway, it's closest to Tri-State, they drive a big loop around the front of the building on the east side and then have to make another big loop. Now that we have the new Flex 2 building there used to be a field there. Now it's with cars that are going to be parked in front of that building and across from the where the parking is right now. It just makes it just difficult for people that have a trailer to be able to wind through there, go all the way to the far east driveway, and then have to loop back around. So to have that new exit there will allow somebody to drive in on the east-west side, immediately load up, and drive right back out onto River Park Drive without having to loop all the way around both of those buildings.
Okay, that makes sense.
And as far as, we'll make sure that we get narrow painted, and
Yeah.
can't control everybody, right?
No, but I think it at least minimizes the wrong way traffic.
Yeah, if somebody's driving up, they'll see that that's they shouldn't be driving in that way. So
If they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it, just
Yeah.
like the side
Yeah.
traffic.
yep. So
Well, they make the turn going north. They'll only do that once and realize that's not going to fit too well either.
yeah. Well, and that's the other part of that is when somebody's pulling out. With people coming from the northeast coming around that bend, you really can't see them all that well. right? I mean, you've been in and out of there. So it's just it's gonna force them to actually make a right-hand turn back on the River Park Drive,
Right.
basically.
Okay, perfect.
So,
Thank you.
yep. Anything else?
Commissioners, any other questions?
I think so.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the new driveway access installation request for Flex Building site located at approximately 770 West River Park Drive in Riverdale, Utah, 84405, as requested by Tri-State Metal Roofing and HMP Investments, LLC.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor? Should we?
Go ahead and pull this one. Yeah.
We need to make sure that it's with, working with staff.
On this one, no. All staff supportive of it.
It's already been approved by staff.
Yeah.
Michelle, would you poll the commissioners, please?
Commissioner Nye,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes?
Commissioner Polson,
Yes.
Commissioner Noland,
Yes.
Commissioner Herman,
Yes.
Commissioner Spires.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. It's unanimous. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right,
We can leave.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
All right. Bye.
all right, action item E2, review and discussion of the proposed updates to Title 10, Chapter 27, flood damage prevention ordinance is found in Riverdale City Code. Mr. Agate?
Thank you. I'll review this, maybe not in the same level of detail as the work session, but still explain what's going on here. So over the last 8 years, the Weber County area has been under scrutiny for an updated study by the state of Utah. I forget what they're called. Floodplain Administration, I think is what they're called, the group, through the Department of Public Safety or the Department of Emergency Management. That's what it is, DEM. Anyway, they have been working on this for a while. They brought in specialists both from FEMA as well as engineering specialists to look at the overall waterway system through Weber County and see where they can amend and have better detailed information with newer technology of all the flood potential areas within the county. So as a result, we have two areas specifically, which is the Weber River and Birch Creek, that have flood potential as identified in that. Always has been kind of the subject area for flooding. And we've actually seen, obviously, flooding with Weber, well, both waterways for that matter. We've seen flooding behavior. That being said, over the last few years, we've had numerous conversations and reviews and meetings and sometimes didn't even necessarily agree with the findings, but ultimately the plan document is ready to move forward. The appeal period that's been required by federal mandates for all revisions to the Code of Federal Regulations has gone through. So all the, I guess you'd say, the federal processes that are required to update this document for the county have been checked. The boxes have all been checked over that 8-year period. So now we're at a point where the plan's ready to be approved, and I wish I had noted the exact date of that enactment, but it's the end of November 2023. I know that. Sometime like November.
I think it's the 30th, if
Okay.
I remember right from reading the packet.
Good. So yeah, it's right there at the end. I was going to say it's like the 26th, but yeah, that's even better, 30th. So the end of November, this has to be approved, and then FEMA basically checks the community and says, yep, you're in compliance, and if you're not, you jeopardize your city's participation in the flood insurance program, basically, is what we're talking about. So as a result, we need to update the flood damage prevention ordinance. The last time we did this was 2015, I believe. So it's been that many years since an update to it. And at that time, we accepted basically the directed ordinance from our state floodplain administrator during that time. So the old ordinance, ironically, matches what FEMA and the state floodplain administrator said was the right ordinance at that time. So what's fascinating, I guess what I'm trying to tell you as planning commissioners is they've taken that old document they were comfortable with and look how much more robust this product is since 2015 product. And I guess you just take away from that what you will, what that means, and seeing that level of impact to their own ordinance that we previously adopted and what they've added to it. And what I take away, what I kind of said in jest, but maybe I should say a little more professionally, is that before it seems like those of us that are the floodplain administrators for cities had been the resident experts that would help residents and try to walk them through and understand these standards that were not in the code but are still part of the standards in the larger spectrum or scale of things as they looked at floodplains and that. Now they've taken all the things that the professionals have been taught and trained in and put it right in the code and said, here you have everything. Public at large, you have everything. So you don't have a reason to say you don't understand or you didn't know or whatever. In cities, you can't hide behind, well, I didn't tell them that because it's in your code. That's kind of what I think is the reason they've done it this way. So it kind of puts everybody on notice that these things are serious and they should be followed the way that they're established. So anyway, I've had the sign off from the state floodplain administration team that the ordinance as shown here with the red does meet compliance with the NFIP, and it should because it's following the exact CAN language that I was given. And as a result, if this gets approval, then I need to send them the ordinance that's approved it from the city council, and then they'll check off the city as being compliant, basically for whatever foreseeable future time until we go through it again. Now, one thing I didn't note upstairs, which this is a newer thing that just came out of a training I attended last week on the floodplain. They are looking at a new program. There's new technology that lets them use more of a grid system using GIS technology, and they can get more pinpoint accuracy in flood risk. And so it becomes more of a dynamic, they called it a dynamic blanket, I think is what they called it, of identifying where the flood risks are. So you don't just look at traditional waterways. They can look at like areas where there's sheet flow or depressions in areas that they otherwise couldn't identify before with this new technology. So it'll be interesting to see what even the next step looks like. But what it probably will do, it sounds like, is reduce the waterways as the only areas of risk and spread the risk out through a community more targeted. So areas and residents that have never had potential floodplain risks or identified areas might all of a sudden be part of this future analysis over the next decade as they go through this process. I say next decade because this one was about a decade to get to where we are today. So I anticipate that next step will feel that same way. But we'll see. It might get, if technology is quick enough and they do it, maybe it might be 4 or 5 years in the future. I don't know. But anyway, that's probably a little more than you wanted to know, but it matters because obviously it affects insurance rates and it affects risk. And if ever any of these areas did flood, these are the rules of the game, both before and after, during, et cetera, when it relates to any kind of residential or commercial businesses. So that's why it should matter to you as planning commissioners. I'm not saying you have to become experts at it, but I definitely would say make sure you have a kind of an understanding of what it is and how to help people find it and that sort of stuff. That's probably going to be more than anything would be your role in this case. But obviously with the public hearing, it is land use. It affects land use directly. So that's why we would have to have a public hearing and make sure that you're comfortable with recommending it to city council. So there you go. There's my spiel on.
Can you inform me about the Birch Creek flow? Where is that at, and how does it come about?
So it's a really interesting problem, is the best way to say it. It's kind of like the saying on that one has always been catching the tiger by the tail, and we're at the tail. And so what happens is it goes all the way up into like Shadow Valley and Upper Ogden, Upper South Ogden, and as homes develop into that area up there, they come into Birch Creek, and then Birch Creek comes down, and it gets collected there just below Washington Boulevard there in South Ogden. There's that big basin that fills up, and with a lot of water, it kind of at times ponds up like a mini pond, and it's dammed up. Well, there's a spillway in there that's only so big, and it can only meter so much water, and then when it can't meter water anymore, it just lets it all out, whatever it can't meter. And so if that basin gets surcharged to a point where it can't operate as a basin anymore, whatever excess dumps out. And so as that water is collected and then dumps out, it comes rushing down from there and comes down into our system through South Ogden. And the line actually goes behind Young Automotive, and it's now been piped. It used to be above ground, like open ground. Now it's been piped, which at the time they did the study, it was open, which is another issue we have. Now it's been piped and even further pressurized into a system that's not open anymore. So it can't open flow like they originally thought, and that's one of their flaws is they had in their old plan an open flow, that it would somehow come up out of the waterway and then sheet flow everywhere and come down Riverdale Road and then roll into Burger King. But now it's in a pipe. So that risk is gone. But when you have that conversation with them, they say, well, go and do your own study and prove us different then, kind of thing.
So where does that
Long and
water
short.
end up finally?
So to continue on, it comes down, the pipe goes between Young Automotive and In and Out, and it goes under Riverdale Road. And at some point, it comes across in a diagonal angle. We don't know exactly where, but we have an idea because of manholes. Comes at a diagonal angle through the parking lot where about Take 5 and Fizz are. And it hits a point where there's a line between the back of the little shops, the little strip center that's there just west of, not quite there, but just west of Denny's, the little row buildings that has like Siegel Book and the hearing centers and stuff. There's a line right there that has manholes between the islands and the buildings. That line goes down, works its way west, and then it open channels right by the R.C. Woolley building and the warehouse. It opens up as a ditch. And then it goes down further, and then we have another problem, because we're full of problems. Then it hits this area that's the county, and the county has a gate down at the end, and the gate isn't working properly. It gets cluttered and fills with debris and blocks water, and so that creates a damming effect, and they're not always the best at maintaining or keeping it taken care of, especially in a high flood event. And so then it backs up, and the water has in the past had a tendency to then flow to the north and flood businesses in Ogden that are along the mall already. That's kind of the historical behavior of it. So when high pressure volume, because all that water's coming through in such high volume and a big effect, the manhole covers pop off and water comes up the top, but then it goes down there and it backflows. But any water that gets through there goes into a pipe, and we believe the pipe between there and the river, because it has to go under a bunch of tracks. It's like 6 or 8 sets of tracks through there, and then in real estate, we think the pipes collapse somewhere in there, on top of it somewhere. But the railroad doesn't want to take responsibility for it, and Weber County keeps deflecting on trying to resolve the issue. So until we figure out if there is some kind of a belly or a piece of the pipe's broken or whatever, and it's blocking access, the system isn't working right. So bottom line is you've got 2 areas that create failure, and it backs up, right? And so, yeah, could it have flood impacts the area? Yeah, but we have an idea of what that looks like, and FEMA has it 100-fold more impactful than it really is, even though and they're basing it on sheet flow that no longer can happen because the water by Young Automotive is piped. It can't even happen the way that they have it drawn up in the plan, but when they did the study, like any federal government study, once it's in place, that's the gospel, even if it's now 5 years old and it doesn't work that way anymore. To them, that's how it works until they do another study and somebody pays for it. Or we pay for it and tell them they're wrong.
So the pipe that's supposed to go into the river, no water's coming out of that pipe.
It comes out. It's just metered. It's slowed down.
Very slow down. So the pipe someplace
and
between.
To what effect, we don't know.
Isn't equal to what's coming.
Yeah, we don't know to what effect, because we know it backs up into the open area, the waterway. It backs up into that, and it has flooded the R.C. Woolley warehouse, and it has flooded businesses along Pacific Avenue that are west of the mall. There's a tire store that was really flooded and ready to sue both Ogden and Weber County and Riverdale because of it.
Could the city hold the railroad liable if we notify them?
The railroad is like the power company. They are just as aggressive and pushy and powerful as the power company, getting whatever they want. So my point in that is, and I need to be careful because I know I'm on the record. But my point in saying that comment is not to say anything negative. They probably would be okay with me saying that. It's that they wield some power and control over political discussions because of how they go through multiple cities and multiple counties. And so they're hard to even have that kind of a conversation with, let alone accept any responsibility for any issues on their property.
Which is typical for these days. For
So
business in general.
and there's kind of a, Weber County has tried multiple times to then push us to incorporate that area of Weber County into our city, but you can imagine what our pushback is and why.
Why
when
do
they
we
try
want
that.
to assume a liability.
Yeah. So that's kind of long and short of Birch Creek. Maybe more than you wanted to know, but there are serious issues with it. And
So do you know how big the pipe is and when did they put the pipe in?
I'm sure Sean would know, and I'm sure, or has an idea, and I'm sure Weber County knows to some extent, but
But
it's
it's
old.
been sometime in the last few years, right?
Some-
Because it was sheet water before.
It's been doing this, yeah, probably for 1 or 2 decades. It behaves like this when it's high enough volumes of water backing out of there. Like the flood of the warehouse, I don't even know if it was during my time here. It might have been going all the way back to 2011 when that R.C. Woolley warehouse flooded from the
But that was
backup.
before the pipeline was in, right?
No,
No?
no, all those pipes. It would have been before the pipe between In and Out and Young Automotive was in. Or at that point, it was open ditch up there.
Right.
Because it was that old Knight Furniture, and it was just an open ditch around the property. But when Young Automotive went in and converted the site, they piped that whole ditch in.
Okay.
But the study was done back when it was Knight Furniture by FEMA, so it was open ditch at that time. And see, that's where the disconnect is in their findings. That's what we don't like, but we didn't get anywhere
Part
in
of the
fighting
disconnect.
it. Yeah. Yeah, and then their study methodology we have issue with, but yeah.
Well, how does other cities, Mike, handle something when it crosses boundaries between different cities?
That's when the county gets involved. After last time that we had a major flood event that did this at this one and other areas of the county, they had a huge county-wide meeting of all the public works director and flood waterway managers to discuss shared waterways. Because again, we're getting all the influx of all the water that's being dumped into the system by all the developments above us, right? And even some of our own developments, as we develop West Bench, as we develop 550 West, where Raising Cane's and all that is, that water dumps into Birch Creek from that development area. So we have to be pretty aware of what we're even doing to ourselves with the system. But yeah, everybody above us, as they continue to develop, if they keep dumping their water in that system, we get even more volume in a system that's fairly narrow and then has 2 blockages down at the end. One, if Weber County doesn't do their job, and 2, just not knowing what's in the pipe under the railroad tracks.
So, Mike, were there any issues with Birch Creek this past spring?
Not so far.
So good.
No, and we haven't. The last time I think we had a flood event where it did flood that tire store, it was like 2014 or 15. There was a wet year in there, a little bit, or wet spring or something, and it flooded that around that time.
Okay.
So, but anyway, I know it's a lot of history, but that's why we have this is and obviously like that tire business, they probably should have had flood insurance. Whether or not they were identified in a floodplain in Ogden, I don't know. I don't know what the Ogden area looks like, but were they in the area and they were impacted by it, they would have then qualified for reimbursement from FEMA, depending on the nature of the damage and the amount of the damage.
But according to your analysis, there will be some homes who are presently flood insurance mandated
Yeah.
that will be removed from those rolls.
They told us to engage, and that's what the newsletter article briefly says too. Engage your insurance agent and be aware of those changes to see how it impacts your property, because many properties will have the option no longer be required to be in that floodplain program as part of their insurance.
And then others will be put into the floodplain.
Mostly businesses, hardly any residences will be. Now, some residents will stay in it because they're close enough. Like I assume River Glen, the properties right along the river, they'll probably still all be in it because they're so close, right? But there are some really weird areas on the old map that are fairly removed that are in it, and you're kind of like,
Yeah.
why? They're going
They're
to be
quite a bit.
easily
They're
out
far,
of it.
quite far from it.
Yeah, they'll be in what's called Zone A. Right now, mandatory flood insurance is in a zone, what's called a Zone AE. So that, I'm not sure what AE stands for, if it's like above elevation, or I'm not sure. But anyway, anything that's in a Zone AE is mandatory floodplain insurance or mandatory casualty coverage insurance. Because obviously the overall umbrella covers floods, right? Anything in Zone X is you have optional relief, but FEMA will, if you go and get flood insurance and optionally, then FEMA will reimburse the damage in those areas. And then if you're outside it, you can still qualify for flood insurance, but it's more expensive because your risk is so low. So actually, it's the other way around. It's less expensive because your risk is so low, but the likelihood of you getting flooded is obviously much less from their study. I said that wrong. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to make a motion that we set a public hearing.
Oh, we need to note that we're into item B of the agenda real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were.
Oh, it's okay. We
to-
just did the item A. So
Okay.
real quick, just item B.
So we'll now move into agenda item E2B. Consideration to set public hearing for proposed updates to Title 10, Chapter 27, Flood Damage Prevention, found in Riverdale City Code, requested by the Community Development Department and FEMA.
I make a motion that we set a public hearing for Tuesday, October 10th, for the proposed updates to Title 10, Chapter 27, Flood Damage Prevention. Ordinance is found on the Riverdale City Code as requested by Community Development Department and FEMA partners.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll poll the commissioners, if you would, Michelle.
Commissioner Noland,
Yes.
Commissioner Polson,
Yes.
Commissioner Spires,
Yes.
Commissioner Nye,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes?
Commissioner Herman.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes, and we'll have that prepared for our next meeting. Okay, we'll now move to item F. Comments from Planning Commission city staff. Any comments? I do have a question. It's been noted, since we're talking about flood, I've noticed some of the city drains and grates that you look down and there's 3 inches to silt. Who do we notify?
I'm going to speak off the cuff because I don't 100% know, but I think I've heard him talk about this. I think they have a cleaning schedule for those. They be in the Public Works Department, and they go through a cycle of cleaning on that. And I think at the Water Master, which I think it's Travis Dolly who would oversee that, but clearly Sean and above
We
him.
just contact.
Yeah, if you see one that's a concern, but I suspect they have a schedule.
The one that comes off Diamond Hill. I mean, it just,
And obviously some of them too, if they have higher flows and they bring a lot more debris, they get dirtier faster too.
when it rained really hard this past summer, it was 6 to 8 inches deep.
Yeah, not
right there
holding
in
it.
front of-
And sometimes the capacity is just not there because the pipes are too small too, especially older areas. The pipes are smaller and they don't carry as much water, unfortunately. And then that's a backup happens too. But yeah, you could communicate to the Public Works Department a concern either by email or even a quick call.
Okay,
And when you see an area like that and have them look at it.
that's what I was looking for.
Well, I've also seen trees growing out of some of them. I mean, the silk is so deep that trees and everything are starting to grow out of them, and I thought that's not good.
Siberian elms take root and
Yeah.
Again, I'm off the cuff. I'm sure if you were to contact them, they'd tell you specifically what their policy is, but that's what I suspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd just like to mention, I said something to the mayor about the bridge that goes over on, let's see, is that 4400?
Yeah.
The bridge that goes over the freeway. There were so many potholes
It's
and
county. That's another one of
got
those.
fixed.
Oh, it did? They finally
Got
took care of it?
fixed. Yeah.
Well,
It
enough
is-
people complained to them then.
It's so nice because there were some pretty deep potholes.
Yeah.
It keeps developing them, and I don't know why. Some areas just develop.
It has
out
always
those
been that way
potholes, and
over
that-
the years. And
that
it,
bridge just always does. I
Yep.
don't know
But
why.
I did mention something to the mayor, and I don't know. The other day it was
It's
fixed.
like magic.
Yeah.
and they may be on a rotation schedule too, let it get so bad and they kind of know its life before they have to go and resurface it.
Oh my
But
gosh,
yeah.
it was so bad.
I know. I've been on that road too. I know exactly what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
You have to kind of,
Yep. That's another one of those. Remember I talked about areas that the county tries to unload on the city? That's another one of those that the county tries to unload on the city.
Riverdale's unique in that because we've got Riverdale Road that's owned by the state. 4400's by the county.
Yep.
So
But yet, didn't Riverdale City build
With county and state funds
Okay.
in a partnership. Yeah. We sponsored it, but the county agreed to it. Yeah. Thank goodness though we didn't agree to incorporating that area of the road.
Oh, yeah.
So we did all the work to gift it back to the county. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's really great. It's so much better.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
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 Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. You good?